What up, Facebook? Happy Tuesday. Happy Cinco de Mayo. That's exciting, I guess. I don't know. Hope everyone is doing all right, hanging in there. Maybe you've got some awesome plans to have some tacos later. I know I'm going to, because it's Taco Tuesday and Cinco de Mayo. What? Crazy. Wait for a few of you to join on here. Hey Jake, how's it going? Glad you're here. So, in addition to Cinco de Mayo, today is also Giving Tuesday. So, I did post a little bit of information about that in the above description. So, normally that's something that is actually regularly scheduled on December 1st. But in addition to that, they added another one in an emergency response to the unprecedented need caused by COVID-19 right now. So, today is the second day, second Giving Tuesday. So that is happening today. Giving Tuesday now is an opportunity for people around the world to stand together in unity, to use their individual power of generosity, and that so that we can remain connected and continue to heal and help others. And you can show your generosity in many different ways with Giving Tuesday, whether it's helping out a neighbor, maybe you're advocating for an issue, sharing a skill, giving to causes. Every act of generosity counts today. So I encourage you all to keep that in mind. We also have some links posted on our Recovery Fitness Facebook page as well. And there's also an option to donate there as well. So that can also be part of Giving Tuesday if that's something that you choose to partake in. Or even if you just share the links that we've posted about Giving Tuesday, it's all appreciated. So just keeping that in mind today. Thank you all for showing up. Hey Danny, how's it going? So we'll kind of jump right into today's reading a little bit. Interesting topic today for sure. So this book I've been reading to you out of for the last week or so is called Hopeful Healing by Mackenzie Phillips. And just to give you a quick background on her for those of you who are new to these videos. So Mackenzie Phillips is an actress. She was on several soap operas back in the day. And she's also an author of her New York Times bestseller, her memoir called High on Arrival. She is also the daughter of the founder of the 1960s band The Mamas and the Papas. Mackenzie grew up in a dysfunctional environment and subsequently battled a near-fatal drug addiction. She's now a drug and alcohol counselor and an outspoken advocate for addiction awareness and education. She gets real about the hard times of recovery, how to get through them, and the joy of experiencing life clean and sober. So there's a lot of good stuff in here. So each chapter is its own little essay, kind of. And while she does put a little bit of her own story in there, more of that can actually be found in her memoir, High on Arrival. So this is more just these little essays about, her experience with recovery, how to get through certain topics of recovery that, we all struggle with. But you know what? I think honestly a lot of these principles in here can really be applied to the majority of people's lives, whether you're in recovery or not, whether you struggle with addiction or not, no matter what that is. So really can be applied anywhere. Hey Nellie, glad you're on here. So just to give you a little bit of the preface, Mackenzie says, in these essays, I've concentrated on the concepts and feelings that surround the recovery process rather than on the linear story of my life in recovery. I wanted to preserve the conversational foundation of these essays so that they would provide a genuine experience, and hopefully the person reading them would find a friend and some words that are helpful along their own journey. This is a wisdom-based book, not a clinical book. This is also a conversational book. While I do include some basic facts about substance use disorders, I make no claim to being an expert on all things addiction and recovery. I am, however, an expert in my own experience of those two things, and it is in this that I have found the strongest connection with my clients at the recovery center where I work. So it's just to give you a little bit of background on this. Hi Jackie, glad you're on here. Your cousin is Sean, that's awesome. Sean's a good guy. I'm glad to have you on here. So what I've been doing is kind of reading each chapter a little bit, but they're kind of longer chapters. Excuse me. So I've been just picking little bits and pieces, really kind of pulling the meat out of these. And I do read it just as Mackenzie has written it. But I also ask you all to be mindful in the language that we are using. Kind of going forward, more focusing on in your own minds, paying attention to how you describe yourself. Not only how you talk to yourself in your head, because we all do that, right? Are you being gentle with yourself? Are you telling yourself, those kind of same stories over and over again? Are you being are you practicing self-care in the way that you speak to yourself, as you're going throughout your day? And also on the outside too, when you're sharing bits and pieces of your story, are you sharing it appropriately, and are you sharing it in a way that's encouraging and uplifting, or are you using a lot of the stigmatizing language that the recovery community kind of deals and struggles with? And it's interesting. Today's chapter is called "Dead End Streets Have Sidewalks Too." And this is on shame, guilt, and regret. And I think oftentimes that's kind of tied right into some of the language, we use in recovery, because there is so much of that language that we really use to describe ourselves that can have a negative connotation. And the reason they have a negative connotation is because there are often these feelings of shame, guilt, and regret tied in with those words that we use. So again, I just read it as she writes it, but even some of the words in there, I personally would, I kind of challenge myself to see how I talk about those things too. There can be so much stigma on the way we describe ourselves in the recovery community, and sometimes that prevents people from getting the help that they need. Because people hear words like addict and relapse and things like that, and while the word itself is not necessarily a bad word, but sometimes people who are not in the recovery world have this negative idea that surrounds vocabulary like that. And language can be such a powerful thing too. So without going too much into that, again, I've kind of been doing that every day just to give people some awareness for people who haven't been on here and haven't been reading with us the past few days. But we'll kind of jump right into today's reading. Excuse me. All right. So Mackenzie says, shame, guilt, and regret, an addict's emotional trifecta of crappy ways to feel. These are the 3 dark places you go to when you look at something really bad in your life that you did. When you're spending time in these dark places, it feels like there's no way out. Sometimes we go there without realizing it, and sometimes we go there on purpose. Sometimes we go there purposely to continue the process of our self-flagellation. It's like when you listen to a sad song to make yourself cry. It's dangerous territory. It's a dead end after a wrong turn with 3 houses of horror to hang out in. Much like the Hotel California, if you take up residence in any of these houses, you're going to have a hard time leaving. Excuse me. If you're living in your house of shame, you'll still end up in painful conversations with regret and guilt. Guilt and regret follow closely behind shame. Shame is a feeling of distress or humiliation for who you are. Guilt is feeling culpable for what you do. Regret is feeling sad and disappointed that something happened, particularly when your own decisions brought you to the thing you're regretting. And something that's really helped me remember kind of the difference, like, yes, shame and guilt are tied into each other, but they're different. And one of the easy ways that helps me remember that is shame is the idea that I am bad, and guilt is I have done bad. So it's kind of an action versus shame, where that's, really, this humiliation for who I am as a person, right? So just kind of an easy way to remember that. Shame is I am bad, guilt is I have done bad. And again, I'm just kind of skipping around through these readings, so some of it's not all linear here. Mackenzie says, feeling shame is one of the biggest roadblocks to recovery and is one of the biggest culprits in relapse. It's perhaps as powerful as it is because it has such a physicality to it. There is a flush of heat that washes across our bodies, and we turn or hide our faces away when we feel it. We tremble and collapse into ourselves when we're feeling it very deeply. Shame freezes a moment in time when we believe we were at our worst, and it holds up like a mirror, so the worst version of ourselves is what we see. Shame is the state we put ourselves into when we feel that we have committed a deep violation of who we are supposed to be in our own eyes and in the eyes of society. Out of these 3 feelings, shame is the most destructive because it is connected to our core selves. Shame is the gap between who we perceive ourselves to be and what we know to be right. We feel shame when we fail to meet that interior moral standard. It's a self-imposed judgment that measures the gap. The greater the distance, the more unworthy we deem ourselves to be. Um, no one wants to feel shame, so we strive to be true to our moral core, to meet our internal as well as societal standards. It is when we can't recover from the feeling of unworthiness that can accompany shame that we start having a problem. And for addicts who have a long list of all the way for addicts who have a long list of all the ways they did not live up to internal and societal standards, shame can become a self-blame narrative that cycles in on itself. After a while, the shame stops being about a specific moment of failure or humiliation and starts being about who the person is all of the time. It's that internal dialogue that starts with, I'm a failure, and then it goes straight to, no one would love me if they really knew me. They would see I am horrible and unworthy. The fact that you feel that way becomes its own shame as well. So kind of pausing there for a second and, really thinking about if you've ever experienced any of that in your own life too. And she makes a good point on here, when sometimes we feel like we don't live up to those societal standards because, there's a lot of people who don't, fully understand the depth and the weight of addiction, and all that goes with it. So there are these societal standards, unfortunately, and, that's why I always, shouldn't say always, but that's why, I kind of question some of the language that I use, because I don't want this negative connotation of society to think one way about addiction and recovery, right? And while that's an uphill battle and it's not something that I can change on my own, it's something that we can all change, so that way when we go into the world, we can really show people like this is actually what recovery looks like. We can show all the great things that we can do, and we can show those comebacks from the things that we have put ourselves through and the terrible things that we've gone through. So just kind of breaking that mold and breaking that stigma, because there is so much shame behind, without somebody knowing and fully understanding that depths of addiction, that can be kind of dangerous territory for us, right? And that's a really hard one to get out of, especially if someone has gone their entire life and maybe had a really difficult childhood and maybe even from a young kid, always felt that they were a failure, maybe never lived up or could never, satisfy their parents or siblings, or, maybe some of you have had those rough childhoods. So we grow up with this one way of thinking. She says it's that internal dialogue that starts with I'm a failure, and then it grows up into be no one would love me if they really knew me. They would see I am horrible and unworthy. That's shame, and now it's all of a sudden becoming about our internal selves as a whole. And that is a really hard cycle to break, especially if it's something that people have gone through their entire lives. So she says, how to break this cycle. Begin to take a serious look at the standard to which you are holding yourself, specifically the one that you feel you are failing to meet. What I found when I did this work for myself was that my expectations of what it takes for me to be worthy were crazy. No one would actually meet them all of the time. Some of them were just outright not doable. I mean, some of my expectation was that I was supposed to always be happy, never sad. I was a failure if I was sad. No one can be happy all the time, but I somehow thought I should be. So figure out your true standards, the reasonable standards that are reachable for you. And I don't know if that's anyone else's perception. Maybe I think there are times where I get that in my head. I get down on myself for, having a bad day. There are times in my past where I've really struggled with that, right? But what I didn't realize is that I was setting this unrealistic expectation up here to be happy all the time. But it's not accurate for any human, right? We're like I was sharing a week ago. As humans, we're wired this way. We're wired to feel the whole range of emotions. And, it's not sustainable for us to stay in one emotion all the time. It's impossible. It just doesn't work that way. So, when you're kind of in that headspace, it's really important to take a look at those expectations. She says, take a look at the standards to which you're holding yourself. So even asking yourselves that today, are there standards that you hold yourself to? Are there really high expectations that you set for yourself? And that's different than setting, some crazy goals. We can have that drive and that motivation to complete some of these crazy goals that we set for ourselves. Ones that's different than having this unrealistic expectation. For the example that she gave, I'm supposed to be happy all the time, or like I'm a year into my sobriety. It's supposed to look like this. I'm supposed to have it all figured out. I'm supposed to feel happy. You know what I mean? Like those are unrealistic expectations. And those are ones that I've struggled with. I can remember when I kind of hit that year mark in my recovery for the first time, I had this unrealistic expectation of myself that it was supposed to look way up here. It was supposed to look a certain way, and it didn't. And I was angry and I was bitter and I was resentful. And I felt that shame. It's like, what the heck am I doing wrong? I was just miserable. I was unhappy. But, not realizing until much later on that that was my own doing. I set this crazy standard for myself. So I really encourage, we talk about self-awareness all the time, and I really encourage you all to just take a look at some of those standards and expectations to where you're holding yourself at. And sometimes it's good to have those high standards, to kind of depending on what it is really, because I think about goals and things that we set. Like I can set a high goal, I can set a high standard for those things. I can make sure it's obtainable and realistic, but sometimes I want to set those high standards and high goals, because it pushes me to work harder, that drive. But when it becomes about setting the high standard for myself and who I am, that's when we have to be careful of how high are we setting that, and is it realistic? And when we don't meet that, how are we treating ourselves? Do you instantly get that, oh God, I'm such a failure? Or like she says, no one would love me if they really knew me. So really just taking a look at yourselves. She says, talk about it with someone you trust or say it out loud, write it down. Shame is the strongest when we don't speak about it, right? How many times have we carried shame for our lives, and how long have we carried that for? Sometimes this goes on for years or people's entire lives before they ever speak about feeling shame, So bring it out into the open. Say it. Say, I feel ashamed. Say why you feel ashamed. Listen to it. Let it be what it is. Then take a deep breath and release it. Give yourself the same compassion you would give someone else who is being eaten up by unreasonable shame. Tell yourself, I am worthy even if I fail, even if I make a mistake. Right? Because we're all humans. We all make mistakes. And I believe again, I'm just up here sharing my own experience and my own thoughts. I'm not an expert, and not everyone agrees with that, and that's totally okay. But I firmly believe we are wired to make those mistakes, right? Because that's how we grow. We grow by learning and by doing and, by failing and making mistakes, if you choose to see it that way. But they don't all have to be failures, right? Those can be, little catalysts for change. They can be knowledge that we've gained. It can be a stepping stone. It can be a lesson that we were meant to learn, right? So I believe that we're hardwired to, make those mistakes in a way. That's how we just continue to grow as humans. But giving yourself some grace and some compassion, right? Tell yourself, I am worthy even if I fail, even if I make a mistake. So let's take a look at guilt next. I want to distinguish guilt from shame. Guilt is when you look back and say, oh my God, I pawned my mother's diamonds. Or, oh my God, I lied to my family so that I could go get high. These thoughts feed into the shame of I am bad and I am broken, but are not in and of themselves thoughts of shame. The goal here is to understand and believe that you are not the shameful things that you've done. A therapist I once had said something along these lines that was very powerful. You feel shame for all these things that you believe you are. You feel guilt for all these things you've done. But let me ask you, from your point of view on this day that we're living now, would you do those things now? Wow, mind blown just like that. My God, no, I would never do them now. This realization gave me the opportunity to separate, if you will, my behavior in active addiction from my true self in recovery. A simple question, would I do that now? And I love that too. I have read this book before. I haven't read it in a while, so I've kind of just been skimming through these to share with you all. But I love that, right? We look at our past and we feel shame for all these things that we believe about ourselves, and we feel guilt for a lot of these things that we've done. But ask yourself, where you are right now, today, sitting here, right now, right here with me, ask yourself, would you do these things now? And that's not something you have to answer on here. Please feel free to comment. I will check in, with these comments in a moment. But that's kind of like an internal question. Would you do these things now? And that gives you that opportunity to separate your behavior back then in active addiction, and to what it looks like now. And that's not using that as an excuse to say, well, I was high and that made me do that. That's not what it's about. You know what I mean? We still make choices. And, like I was saying yesterday, every choice that we make has a consequence or reward, right? And not all consequences are bad. There are positive consequences and positive rewards for doing certain things. And then there are negative consequences. We still own those. That's still on me. I can't blame something else. I know that, when I choose to engage in these behaviors, that, my mind becomes powerless over it, but I'm still responsible for that. But it's really being able to look back and just see the behavior back then to where it is now. And I look back and I ask myself that question, and oh my God, I wouldn't do all those things that I did, those things that I carry guilt for, right? And that allows us that space to maybe be a little bit more gentle with ourselves and to forgive ourselves. She says, that question gave me an opportunity to look at the power of drugs and alcohol, and then the power of compassion and love. I have enough compassion for myself and love for myself to admit to myself that I would never, ever have done those things had I not been in that state. That's not giving me a pass. It's balancing things out. That's such a good point. One thing that can F up this balance is regret. Let me start by saying how lame and ultimately useless regret is. This sounds harsh, but bear with me. So she does go into talking about a story with her son a little bit. I kind of want to skim through this a little bit. She says, if you were actually to physically create a timeline where certain past events never happened, you might not be the person you are now. Maybe the thing you're busy regretting is the one integral moment that needed to occur for your personal journey or growth. Regret is a useless emotion, a useless mindset, because you can't change the thing you regret. You can wish it never happened, but you can't change it. It's done, past, over with. The thing with regret is that it's easy to fall into it, to move in and stay steeped in it. I regret 1,000 things, but I don't allow myself to live there, right? And as we were talking about last week, like, time is such a precious gift, and time is time is the one thing that we do not get more of, right? Time is only forward motion. So I can choose to sit here and I can sit in the regret, and I can sit and say, oh, I wish I never did this. I wish that never happened. I wish I never hurt this person. I wish I never moved here. I wish I never got involved with this person. You know what I mean? Like, I could sit here all day and do that. And I'm sure some of you could too. But what is the point? Ask yourselves, why are you sitting in that regret? Can you go back and change it? No, you can't. What you can do is you can look at it and you can acknowledge it, and like she said, you can wish it never happened, but the fact of the matter is that it did happen. It's past, it's done, it's over with. So you can recognize it and you can sit with it for a moment, you can label it, you can look at the situation, and if it's something that you have some ownership in, you can take part in that and you can make it right and you can move forward. And maybe you can forgive yourself. And maybe you can have a little bit of grace and self-compassion when you do that, right? For all their negativity, shame, guilt, and regret can be teachers and motivators. One of the most profound lessons I've learned from them, and am still learning, is that I'm human, and therefore not perfect. I'm completely unable to be what someone else wants me to be. I'm only able to be who I am. And there is no shame, no guilt, and no regret to be found in that truth. Hang on to that. Think about that for a second. I want to repeat that. One of the most profound lessons I've ever learned from them, from shame, guilt, and regret, I've ever learned, and I'm still learning, is that I am human and therefore not perfect. I'm also saying this out loud for me so that I hear it enough times and I can let go of that too, because I'm also human and I struggle with not being perfect sometimes, right? I'm completely unable to be what someone else wants me to be. And frankly, I don't want to be something else that someone wants me to be. I want to have, values that other people can appreciate, right? But those need to be my own first before anyone else can start appreciating those things about me. So I don't want to be someone else's image of what they think I'm going to be. I'm only able to be who I am, and there is no shame, no guilt, and no regret to be found in that truth. Shame, guilt, and regret can be teachers so long as you don't take up residence with them. Don't hang out at that nasty block party for too long, or else that will become your permanent home. It's tempting to use our sense of shame, guilt, and regret to punish ourselves by dwelling in the horrible despair they bring us. But that's not where the path forward lies. So at the end of each one of these chapters, there is a little bit of a reflection, and then there's also an action piece. So I'm going to jump into the action piece, and this has been my take home for you all every single day we've been doing this book. So it works if you work it. Guilt and shame are difficult to distinguish from one another. We can spot shame because it usually starts with an I am statement. I am a bad person because I did a bad thing. So the next time you catch yourself engaging in shameful self-talk due to past actions, directly confront your thinking by stopping and asking the question, would I do this now? And I would wager that your answer would be a distinctive no, stopping the shame spiral before it begins, right? So that's my take home for you all. I know I talk quite a bit about self-awareness, and the only way we really gain that self-awareness is to continue to practice these things over and over. So if this is new territory for you and you're new to this realm, and if you're any type of human which struggles with shame and guilt and regret, which we all do, by the way, because we're all human, we're not perfect. So if this is something you're struggling with, work on it every day. That's my take home for you, right? We can hear these take homes over and over, and we can, in one ear and out the other. But it's when we really start practicing these things and we really start catching ourselves. Just say, wait a second, right? Pause, take a step back. Before I react, before I do something, let me pause and think about it for a second. Or if I'm stuck, let me not react. Let me reach out to somebody. Let me talk to somebody about this first, right? Once we start practicing these things over and over, that self-awareness really just starts to grow. And I'm not saying that I have it all together, that I have all the self-awareness in the world. And I'm not saying I'm better than anybody in that sense. The only person that I am better than is who I used to be, even who I was yesterday. I can only aim to be better than how I acted yesterday, right? But the more I continue to do these things and do these self-check-ins, the greater my self-awareness grows. So now I'm at a spot where I can catch, when we talk about that negative self-talk, I hear it. It doesn't mean it doesn't pop up, but I can catch it now. And I can pause, I can stop dead in my tracks and say, nope, I'm not going there. I'm not doing it. I deserve better. I'm going to learn, I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to move forward, right? So take this with you today. Again, when you get in that spot and that mindset of getting in that shame, right? If you start to think, I'm a bad person because I did a bad thing, fill in the blanks, whatever that sounds or feels like to you, whatever you're experiencing. So the next time you catch yourself in shameful self-talk due to your past, stop right there. Confront your thinking and ask yourself, would I do this now? So that's kind of my little take home for you all. I'm going to check in some comments before we wrap up here. Spot on. Jackie says, Yana was also recently talking about how people always think, am I good enough? Yeah. And that's something that I struggle with, more so now than lately, because we're all home right now. So I'm very stuck in that mindset of not feeling like I'm doing enough. This isn't my normal life. My normal life is busy, 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 go, 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 be here, be there, be in 10 different places at once and help 5 million people. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but that's kind of like how my life feels like sometimes. And, there are days where I'm okay with that. But yeah, struggling now being home, oh gosh, well, I'm certainly not doing all the things I normally would. I don't feel good enough. I didn't do enough today. And really just breaking that down and, just being kind and gentle with myself. I am enough. I did enough. It's okay. I stayed sober today. That's huge, right? So just working on being more gentle with ourselves. I love that. Am I good enough? You are good enough, and I am good enough. And, it's another one of those things that we practice over and over and over until it starts, until it really starts to take off, right? Elizabeth Butcher, thank you for the reading. Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Jackie says, the book Rewired also helps to slowly stop your negative thoughts about yourself. I've not heard of that. I'll have to check that out. Thank you for sharing that, Jackie. Jake says, I took CBT at outpatient, and it was probably the best decision I've ever made. It really made me more aware of my feelings, why I act the way that I do, and really brings it back to childhood trauma for me. Abandonment just kept playing a theme in my life. And now I can really slow my initial reactions and actually view things in a realistic manner. Now I feel those stuck points with positive affirmations. It's really had a profound effect on my life. And to add to talking about the childhood trauma aspect, I recommend anyone to search TED Talk Childhood Trauma on YouTube. It's pretty eye-opening, the things they have discovered. Thank you for sharing that, Jake. Jake, I always appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty on here. It really means a lot, and it really adds a lot, too, truly. Thinking about that, that's something that's been a theme in my life, too, for so long time. And oftentimes it's where a lot of our behaviors stem, right? We're not born this way. We don't come out of the womb with all these, jaded feelings and all these, horrible thoughts and feelings about ourselves, right? All the negative self-talk, we're not born like that. That's a learned behavior. But oftentimes that really does, stem from childhood trauma. And I'm not up here speaking as an expert on trauma by any means. I only know my own story and, what I've been through. But I can really relate to that, Jake. I love that. And so now I can slow my initial reactions and actually view things in a realistic manner. And that's amazing, right? That's such a huge mental shift to, being aware of something and now shifting how I deal with it, right? And that's where the action part comes in. That's where the putting in the work comes in. And it's hard, and sometimes it's long, and sometimes we get in these stuck points, as Jake just said. I'm like, oh my goodness, when is this going to start change? When am I going to start getting this? But putting that aside and really just taking the action and doing it anyways and just trusting the process. It's a hard thing to do, but trust the process. Trust that the more times you stop and check in with yourself before you're about to act on something, trust that process. You do that enough times and it's going to start to become regular for you, right? It's going to start to become natural. Good share. Stacy's on here. Hi, Stacy. Rewired teaches the same great thing. I was just going to ask who the author is. Okay, Erica Spiegelman is the author of Rewired. Thank you, Jackie, for sharing that. Great book. Definitely have to check that out. Nellie says, thank you for reading that. I have so much trauma and I'm learning slowly ways to deal, but need some more help. Any kinds of help. Yeah. And we all do, right? Thank you for admitting that, actually. Even to just admit, like, I need help, right? All kinds of help. Thank you for admitting that. That takes courage. For a lot of us, myself included, I'm not somebody who likes to ask for help. I'm very quickly to be there for others and to give it out to others. But when it comes to me, I get in that mindset sometimes of, I've got this figured out. I'll do this on my own, right? But what I've realized is that I can't do this on my own, and that's okay. I'm human. I'm not perfect. I need to give myself a little bit of grace. Let go of that shame. Let go of I am bad. Let go of the guilt for the things I've done in my past. Let go of the I did wrong, I did bad. Let go of that stuff. Be kind, be compassionate, and just pay attention to yourselves. Check in with yourselves. And if it's something you're struggling with, reach out, talk to people. Who are your supports? Do you have supports? Whatever kinds of people that look like for you. Do you have healthy supports? Do you have people that are giving you a hand up, or do you have people that are pulling your hand down? Waiting for you to fail, waiting for you to fall. Check in with your supports and make sure that there are people that they're going to question you and call you on your stuff, but in a loving, compassionate way, right? I would much rather someone give me the realistic image of what's really going on, but still continue to pull me up than rather to pull me down. So check in with your supports. Use those. Use us. We're here. Us. That brings me to my next point is, if any of you are looking for some guidance, if you're, looking for someone to, kind of walk alongside you in your journey of recovery, we are still engaging in our peer services here at Recovery. So please reach out. We're here. We'll get you hooked up with somebody. I posted the phone number in the chat, 622-4975. It's 585. You can also Facebook message us. Our email is on there. I gave you all the information in the above description of this video. And again, just a reminder, it is Giving Tuesday. For those of you that joined in the video late, Giving Tuesday is an opportunity for people around the world, for us all to kind of stand together and be united and give back. And that can be any different ways. We do have links on our Recovery page, so you could donate and give to a cause too, or even just a small act of generosity. Maybe you're helping your neighbor out. Maybe you're, I don't know, cooking dinner, cooking food, and you go drop some off on your neighbor's porch right now. Maybe you're sending a thank you card, or just a card just for the heck of it. Maybe you're mailing that to somebody. Any little act of generosity and kindness and giving to others is what it's really about. So I encourage you all to, just be aware of that today, and kind of moving forward, what can you do today? So I hope you all have an awesome day. Thanks for tuning in, and we will be back here tomorrow. I also posted the link. If you came in late, that's okay. These videos do save. So you can go to the link that I posted for our Recovery YouTube channel, which is Awesome Sauce, or you can go back on our Recovery Fitness Facebook page and see the videos. You can start this one over from the beginning after I end the video here. And please share them. There are so many other wonderful videos on here from many of our other wonderful Recovery crew. Just kind of giving you a little bit of something every day to have at home and to connect with you. So I'm just so grateful that you all are here. And please check out our other videos. I think we got another one coming up at 3 o'clock. And another one later this evening, too. Oops. Just kind of checking in with a few more comments here. Stacy says, helping myself realize that it's a panic attack and relieves me a little, knowing in my head and my heart that it's a panic attack and I can cope with it and ground myself. Self-hypnosis can help, which anyone can learn, which is a relief again because we have a healthy solution to things today. That's interesting. I would actually be curious to know more about that. I've heard a lot of people using that before, so it's, if it's another tool that helps you, then great, go for it. As many tools as I can add to my own little toolbox to help me through my tough times, and then I can turn around and give those tools to others and share them with others, more power to you. So again, thank you all for joining in, and I will see you all tomorrow. I hope you have an awesome Tuesday. Have a safe, sober Cinco de Mayo, and we'll check in tomorrow. Bye.